thank everybody for tuning in now to the third meeting of our 6 meetings for creating the strategic plan to make our mega region a global internet hub. You know, we were planning to meet in person, but I don't know about you guys, but I tell you my experience since our last meeting, the last 30 days, all the groups that have tried to have in-person meetings have punted back to the virtual land. It's just so hard to get back together and to get back together with the number of people that we need. It seemed like the attendance was so low for the in-person meeting. We said, you know, it's better to have all of us or the majority of us virtually than half or less together. So we're going to keep doing virtual until our larger society points to a different direction, because it's just important that we go through this together. We have such a diverse group that's the real power of us. So I hope everybody can appreciate that. And I think we will meet towards the end, but for now, let's just be efficient and make sure we have as large attendees as possible. So today we're going to give you an update on our project. We're going to hear from Stan on how Dominion Energy is powering the growing digital infrastructure. We're going to hear from Henrico in Virginia Beach, from the leaders there about digital infrastructure assets. We're going to hear the latest buzz on the subsea cables and global internet hubs from Vinay Nagpal. And then we're going to map out how we're hiring consultants and then outline the next steps. So we've got an exciting 2-hour agenda. There are plenty of opportunities for everybody to weigh in, and you'll see those designated on the slides. We're just going to follow this agenda, which is pretty much correlates to the goals I just went over. And really, this deck will be posted where we have on that wonderful project website, along with the other materials. We have a new person joining us today, Leonard Sledge from the city of Richmond. He's the director of economic development and really a huge leader in the Richmond scene. Leonard really led the effort for a 9-0 vote on the new Diamond District in Richmond, which is a huge development. But I think one of the most important aspects of it is, and what Leonard's really kind of causes is equitable economic development. So Leonard, thanks for joining us. And you're going to see this equitable economic development is a theme that we're starting to lean into. I want to remind everybody of that this resource, our website, and particularly the button meeting materials. And if you go to that and poke on today's meeting, there are a lot of materials there that you've all gotten in advance and that are posted on here. But one of the things posted on the September 29th slot is our meeting notes that we took from the last meeting. And it just captures, you know, you can't make every single meeting. We don't expect you to, but we spend time on it so you won't miss anything. So it really goes into some detail about our discussion. And for me, the real interesting thing from our last meeting was really kind of some principles that started to come out from our great discussion over the 2 hours in Williamsburg. And we boiled it down to 3 tenets of our overall strategic plan that we're proposing become sort of principles that are guiding us. The first one, which is fascinating, is make equity a primary goal. That the steering committee, you guys expressed a strong desire to make equity one of our primary goals of this overall initiative. And you can see some of the quotes there. I just love this last one, this sort of provocative question: does the world really need another global internet hub? And if so, what are the characteristics of it? And so maybe we want to be different. Maybe there's a way that our status as a global internet hub is it's a giant leveler, or it's a way to help everybody thrive. So this is really aspirational, but I think critically important. And Leonard, when you joined us, it made me think about the focus that you bring to economic development and many other economic development leaders on the steering committee. The second one is serve all communities in the corridor, you know, not just the big city or counties, but really make sure that everybody in between, all the counties and towns and cities of the I-64 Innovation Corridor benefit from this, that everybody has enhanced digital capabilities. And then the third one was generate local jobs and local ROI, to make sure we expand our digital infrastructure in a way that benefits the entire economy here, not just creating infrastructure that will benefit other regions, create jobs and help raise up people who live here. So these were the 3 that we felt like captured the wonderful discussion and that really need to be paramount to how we're thinking about this plan and as it comes together, to think about these as a checklist. So I'm just going to stop there and just see if anybody has anything to say about those three, or maybe just some thumbs up. Did we capture that in the right way? And I'll just say silence means consent, but a little enthusiasm is helpful for me. Great.
So, John, this is Steve DeBerry. I would just say number two, serving all communities in the corridor. I think that's where it's important for us to capture all the number of systems and good efforts that are going on in the region. You know, Southside Network Authority would be an example of that. But I think that's the larger ecosystem which would allow you to connect all communities, some which are underserved right now.
Yep. And Stan, I think you're going to talk to this a little bit in terms of when you stand up in front of a lot of the smaller communities and talk about this, and we got to make sure that we're helping everybody. All right, so in the interest of time, I'm going to move on, but this was a great example of the alchemy that comes from this group and all the varied interests that are represented. I hope you guys saw this wonderful full-page piece in the Richmond Times-Dispatch on Saturday. We included it in the meeting materials. It's in the folder for today's meeting. But the Times-Dispatch really got fascinated with what we're doing here, and this piece is just focused on explaining deep sea cables. But we now have their interest, so I think there'll be more stories to come. And in fact, we are going to be using our virtual innovation spotlight, RVA 757 Connects, the first Tuesdays of every month. We focus some innovation along the I-64 Innovation Corridor, and October 4th and 1st, November 1st, we're going to have these two topics. We're really going to get into the regional fiber network ring that Hampton Roads is building, and then the digital port, go deeper on the subsea cables. And then we just feel like this is a kind of a standard news service that we do. So why not focus it right now on the topics of interest to us as a steering committee? So make sure you get a link to these things. They're on the RVA 757 Connects website. It's a 1-hour virtual meeting with experts. One thing I'd like us to consider here, and when we recruited everybody, we said, just be on this global internet hub and we'll have 6 meetings, and we promise to do most of the work, but just benefit from your wisdom looking at some of the materials. I don't want to break that promise, but I do want to offer an opportunity for us. You know, we've got about 10 groups that are diverse groups, and you can see 8 of them listed here, and there are probably about 5 representatives per group, 50, 60 people on the steering committee. You know, as we start to get deeper into things and we listen to the consultants that we're going to hire, it would be great to have the perspective of all the folks in higher education, let's say, or the economic development leaders that are on the steering committee. And so what we're thinking is that we're gonna send out an email to everybody in a category and said, could you guys self-form and have one discussion? If you want more, great, but just sort of answer these questions, like what do you want to make sure that the rest of us understand about your lens when it comes to this global internet hub strategic plan? What considerations? And then, you know, what do you want to make sure the plan addresses? So it's a checklist for us as the folks pulling it all together. And so we can efficiently share that back with the group. And so if you want to be on one of these groups and it's not your category, that's perfectly fine. But we really want to just see how far this can go, and maybe just 2 or 3 groups get started and just meet 1 or 2 times. But we really want to make this an opportunity for this to work and to see how we could benefit from it. So look for an email from us to try to push us in this direction. Again, it's certainly not a requirement as a part of the steering committee membership, but I think it really would benefit us. I know in particular, like hearing from the military as a group, to the extent that they can share something, or higher education it would be important. And even I remember Sabrina Joy Hogg in a meeting last time said, you know, the cities are really important in terms of, you know, permitting and such. So anyway, we just don't want to miss a vertical, so to speak. And so that's what this call to action is. So look for an email from us following this meeting and see if we could get into these smaller committees just for one meeting outside of these 6 meetings. Okay, so any questions or comments about anything we've gone through so far? Just a quick sort of update on some of the management of this process.
Yeah, hi, John. Just a quick comment. When you were talking about the regional connectivity ring and your some of your virtual meetings coming up, I think what would be really great is to have a session on the various different building blocks, that are kind of fragmented across the greater mega region, and how they kind of come together. Just from an understanding continuity perspective. I think just kind of to focus on that, John, would be really good.
And that's really kind of the method of our madness. We're going to have some content coming up here in the next hour, and we really want to fill that in. We're going to give you the bigger pictures today. Stan and Dominion certainly are the glue that holds it together, but then what are the additional things like the terrestrial networks we probably ought to have as a topic, and have some speakers on that. So that's actually the method to our madness on these, as well as hearing from our consultants that we're going to hire. We'll talk about that towards the end of this morning and get that going. So thank you, Vinay. That's exactly right. All right. Any other observations or questions? All right. Well, let's move to sort of our first topic, powering Virginia's digital infrastructure. And Stan, I'm going to control the slides. Just say next slide, but please take it away from here and give us insights on your world.
Yeah. So good morning. I'm Stan Blackwell with Dominion Energy, and happy to be a part of this team. And so I'm going to kind of touch a couple things. Everybody's aware of Loudoun County and data center issues, so I'm going to take that head on and talk a little bit about data centers and then transition kind of into technology firms in general. So a little broad. I'm more than happy to take questions as I present. The objectives at a very high level, and if you have a question not on here, but these would be the things that I would talk about. I do want to say up front, the way I look at the innovation corridor, it's not just about data centers, but what I will say in Virginia is that's the hottest market. It is a piece of this technology corridor, and I think it ought to be a focus of the team, but there are other technology firms as well. And I think what I'll talk about would apply to any or all of those. So principles are pretty much the same. So with that, if you go to the next page. So let's talk about Loudoun County. And so Loudoun County, just so everybody knows, Loudoun County by itself is the #1 data center market in the world. It's extremely dense. Now, I didn't say Virginia, I said Loudoun County by itself. And in fact, it's a 30 square mile area of Loudoun County is the #1 market in the world. That's about 6% of the acreage in Loudoun County. And we are experiencing exponential growth. In fact, we had pretty strong growth in data centers up until about 2019. And I'm not talking about the end of 2019, up to about the beginning of 2019, the industry growth rapidly accelerated, and it's continued to do that. So if you remember back to your high school days, statistically, it has now, the growth fits a quadratic equation, just to bring back bad memories. So it is not linear growth, it's quadratic or polynomial, pick your terms. And what's interesting in the utility world is in order to build infrastructure and the size of a data center today, we're pretty much building a substation and extending transmission lines for just about every data center campus. And these are regulated assets. And so in Loudoun, for us to build infrastructure, it takes about 3 to 5 years to get all of that accomplished. Permitting is the longest lead time item. Loudoun obviously has a large, they're the world's largest market. And so, some of more on the political front, there's questions from Loudoun's Board of Supervisors, do we want more data centers? And that manifests into longer permitting and discussion times, which is fine. That's up to county administration. And so the issues becomes that we can't add infrastructure fast enough to keep up with demand. And the only way to address that is you have to say you can't have all of the capacity, electrical capacity that you want. We'll get it to you, but we have to bring it in over time. And that's kind of just at a high level what that is. There's probably an engineer or two on here. The issue we're looking at is electrons. If you think of a transmission network as a spider web, you would think that electrons would flow evenly across the spider web to serve all the customers there, but it doesn't work that way. And we're seeing a concentration of the electrons to the eastern part of Loudoun County. And so we have to come in and add some pretty big infrastructure in to help spread the electrons out across other areas of, in my analogy, the spider web. And so that's what we're focused on. And in Loudoun, until we can get that infrastructure into Loudoun, we'll be looking at this constraint. Constraint in our term means you can have some of what you want, not everything. And that's about as simple as I can describe Loudoun County. It is a function of exponential growth and long lead times to bring in infrastructure. That's about how I would boil down the Loudoun County issue. I wish I could say it's a nice problem to have. Everybody would love to have more demand than you can satisfy. But I'll say you may describe that as a nice problem to have. It's not a fun problem to have. So anyway, if you go to the next slide, please. And this just kind of, I made some of these points, and let me come back. Here's why I like the corridor we're talking about, the 64 corridor. In Loudoun County, this is my description, you have a mixed use type zoning. And so many of these data centers, they're very, very large buildings, and you have apartment complexes next to them on one side, and you may have a housing development on the other side. And there's very little green space in this area where all the data centers are concentrating. And so understandably so, that makes it more difficult to bring in large transmission infrastructure, because most people, including folks on here, may say, oh, I'm all for transmission, I just don't want to see it from my house, right? And so one of the issues we have in Loudoun County and why it takes so long to get infrastructure in there is there's very little green space left. In fact, a lot of the data centers today are redeveloping property to stay in the area, but yet we have to bring transmission into that area and disrupt, some of the folks that live in and around that area. And so that adds a complication to Loudoun County. The beauty of the corridor is you kind of go to Richmond. There's a lot of small communities between there and Williamsburg. Then there's a lot of small communities, and then you get into the Hampton Roads area. And so we don't have quite that mixed use development issue. If you just kind of look at the crystal ball, there's a lot of rural areas in there. And that is a recipe for very, very fast infrastructure. You can bring it in a lot faster than you can if you're trying to do data centers in a developed area with little green space that has a lot of residential folks around it. One of the things many of you on this ask me, Anthony's asked me this, but they go, well, if the data center industry or technology industry is facing these, why don't they go south? I think they will slowly migrate south, but over and over, the things that you hear that are strengths in the Loudoun market, Northern Virginia market, are the fiber density, and Vinay's a fiber expert, so he can add to this, but I believe Northern Virginia is the most fiber dense area in the world. What's interesting is when you drive home tonight, wherever you live, for the folks on here, when you drive home, you'll see those directional boards on the side of the road, and the little orange conduits that are coming out of the ground. When you drive home, you'll probably see one, and you'll see one, and if you're lucky, you'll see two little orange tubes sticking out of the ground. If you drive in Loudoun County, there's 30 to 40 of those going in at one point in time. So it's truly a function of the amount of fiber in the ground that draws them to Northern Virginia, which leads to data. You'll hear data gravity or density of the market. Those are the things that are making it sticky, if you will, to get folks out of there. And finally, one of the big things we hear about is you have an international airport. Now, every airport is international, has international flights. What they tell us is they're direct flights to international or West Coast. And so those are the things they tell us clearly. Low cost energy, which we provide in both areas, renewables, those type things are also important. But these are the ones that we typically hear are the differentiators. Now, having said that, so those are things we can focus on. And I think especially on the fiber side, I think Vinay will add a lot of color about the value we're going to bring to the 64 corridor for that particular piece. Now, since we do have this capacity constraint that we're working through, that's a new variable into the technology market. And so if you have exponential demand, and you know that you're going to get it over time in Loudoun, that's now you may start to see companies change their business decisions and say, I want to be in Virginia, but I now need to look for other areas of opportunity. And we will start seeing that. We get a lot of feedback from customers about other areas of interest. And so we're in a great position for this corridor to see a migration. I don't expect the industry to pick up and drop everything on the corridor, but we will see the beginnings of migration, in my mind, to this area, which is great. That's great. To put it in perspective, if you think of our company, the size of our world market sitting in Loudoun, including the other areas of territory, of all the energy we sell, the data center market alone accounts for 20% of that. And what's interesting is about 10 years ago, this industry really didn't exist in the state it is today. So it is a very, very fast, rapid growing industry. And that to me means opportunity for the corridor. To put it in scale, if you look at the bullet on the bottom, we kind of count how many data center buildings do we connect. And that 2.2637 megawatts, that's an electrical measure. And since 2019, we've connected the equivalent of almost 660,000 residential homes. That's the energy equivalent of what we've connected in Loudoun. So we'd love to see a piece of that land in other areas of the state, like the I-64 corridor we're talking about. So go ahead, John. So one of the questions, I'm trying to anticipate questions you may have. One of the questions you may say is, well, what about all other areas, Stan? You're talking about East or Loudoun. Am I going to have a constraint in some other area or in the corridor? And I would answer it this way. Loudoun is very unique. I've talked about the permitting. You know, your wife always has to call you right when you're presenting, right? So sorry for the phone ringing. But in Loudoun, given the mixed use, there's very little green field left where the data centers want to be in that area. And I talked about the political, interest of Loudoun. And so permitting is very long. And the longer your permitting cycle gets, the harder it is to bring an infrastructure to meet the demand. I talked about that in Loudoun. That doesn't exist in other areas of the service territory, especially on the corridor. So instead of 3 to 5 years, we may be looking at 2 to 4 years, and 4 is probably at the far end of that spectrum, because most of the I-64 corridor, there's not a lot of residential development in there, and hence the permitting process has become much easier. And so the difference from Loudoun is it's just the construction process. You're not going to add additional time for permitting, especially if the localities or counties along the I-64 corridor, if this is something they want to participate in and they're transmission friendly, these timelines shrink considerably. If you follow the press, there are other areas of the state, particularly the western parts of the state where data centers are interested today, and the counties have decided we don't want transmission in our county. We like our site views of the mountains and things, and that's okay. Those kinds of decisions is up to the county, but that pushes the industry to other areas. So I just share you with that on the corridor. One advantage we have is there's not a lot of residential development between, like Henrico County, and Williamsburg, and the same from Williamsburg down into the Hampton Roads. And so that makes the building and siting of transmission quite a bit faster than what you have. We have had explosive growth, as I mentioned, in Loudoun. We are expecting migration. I do not expect the growth along the corridor to at least initially be a quadratic equation or have polynomial growth, if you will. I'm going to come back to that algebra thing just to watch you all wince, but I think we'll see a migration into the corridor, and we'll start out with some linear growth. And then as it picks up steam, you'll start to see the rate of change increase at an increasing rate, hence the polynomial reflection. And that also, because I think it'll start out slow and grow over time, that also it aids in bringing infrastructure in advance of demand. So the bottom line is, if you go find a technology firm or a data center and they say, I want to come here, it doesn't exist in your county, let's say James City County, it doesn't exist there. We're going to say, hey, it's 2 to 4 years to bring infrastructure depending on the route. And if the county's friendly to that and the community's friendly to that, we'll bring that online and bring that new facility in there, which is quite a bit different than where we are in Loudoun County. So let me stop there and see if there are any questions about that.
Stan, hi. Great presentation, and thank you for addressing the topic head on. Clearly, there's a lot of ongoing discussions, around the issue, to say the least. But appreciate the leadership role you and your team have taken in addressing the issue and also communicating externally as well. When we look at other regions, in Virginia, looking at the mega region, looking at Henrico, looking at White Oak Tech Park, when you talk about the opportunity there, when you talk about, other data center providers potentially moving, I mean, just to kind of get your perspective, are there, I mean, of course, there's a lot happening from a connectivity perspective, as you're aware, and there are several other attributes that are very positive, but are you seeing a shift already happening in that? Are you seeing there's more that needs to be done as a team? I mean, are there other things that we should all be aware of and be working towards to make that happen, that transition happen?
Yeah, so I would answer it this way, Vinay. And you're not asking for particular customer names, but we are getting a lot of questions from customers that have developments in Loudoun. They're going, hey, what about this area, this county? What about that county? And what we tell them behind the scenes, for example, when they say, hey, what about Henrico? We say, look, Henrico's got a very active data center market. They're very data center friendly. They're transmission friendly. It's a great area. It has political support. All of those things. And by the way, it's right next to the airport. And all of those things are recipes for success to bring a technology firm or a data center on, bring them service very fast and turn them on. And so we're getting asked for multiple counties in the Commonwealth. The vast majority of them, it's a migration south. So they're starting in Loudoun, and the questions are kind of migrating south is kind of the way I would say it. But there is interest in all of those, including Henrico. Those are the ones I continue to hear that folks are asking about. And it used to be, I would say, it was the big cloud players that were the ones that were most likely to locate out of Loudoun County, but we're starting to see a change in the co-location market. For those that don't know, think of an Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook. We kind of just think of those as cloud type data centers. The co-location market is QTS is a very large one in Henrico, but the co-location market, think of it as like a data center hotel. That company builds that and they sell space out or lease space out to customers to make use of that. And the co-location market has been very sticky in Loudoun County. They just haven't wanted to move out, and we're starting to see a lot of interest in that market. It's the first time I've really seen questions about other areas in Virginia. And so that's a signal to me that there's a change coming and we're going to start to see development move in the Commonwealth. So Vinay, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Next slide, John. So, and I'm going to talk about data centers, but I believe these are the secrets to success for technology firms as well, because some of these newer technology firms, they're highly automated. They have a lot of computer equipment. And so from an electrical standpoint, many of them look like a data center. So the points I'll make are similar. First, you opened, John, with equity across the corridor was one of one of our main tenets of this package. And so I think one of the things we need to find out is across our corridor of all those counties, which ones are open to transmission infrastructure. And just to be clear, these aren't the poles outside your neighborhood that you see outside your neighborhood, the wooden poles. These are the big poles, the big iron towers you see. That's big transmission. And in order to feed the kind of electrical needs of a data center or some of these big technology firms, you have to have transmission infrastructure. I'm more than confident there may be counties or localities along the corridor that may decide, we don't want that. And that's okay. That's their choice. But there will also be counties that really they want to develop. They want to get they want to develop their tax base. And the number one thing from our perspective that we hear from customers tell us is that county, are they friendly to transmission? And everybody wants to know, can you put it underground? You can. It's 8 to 10 times more costly to bury transmission. And when you do bury it, you lose capacity because you can't dissipate heat. That's why you put transmission above ground, because you get more bang for your buck and it's substantially cheaper. And so that's the number one thing we hear from customers is, will that county support transmission, or is this going to be a public fight? And Anthony, if you have a yellow box, does that mean you have a question? I guess not. So your picture had a yellow box around it. That's why I asked. The second thing is, and Vinay, this is really more in his, he can add to this and talk about the fiber network in and around the I-64 corridor. But the ideal property has both near it or on it or next to it. And so in both cases, in many cases, that already exists. So if you have properties along this corridor that have transmission near them, and there are some, those are the perfect candidates for some of these high energy use technology firms. And if they have fiber next to them, it's a gold-plated piece of property. That's what I would say. And typically in this industry, when you land one, they start developing out from that particular area, which what you see is happening in Henrico. You see that in all our data center markets. You typically don't just have one. They start to replicate, because you find once the fiber's there and the transmission, adding another company sitting next to that becomes very easy to do. And it's a much shorter connect. The number one thing, and typically when you read in the newspapers, it is happening in some of the counties up north, you have to have local government support. And the things I hear over and over from customers is, how does that county do planning and zoning? Are they in sync? Do they have a fast track program? And for those along this corridor, if you really want to, if this is new to you, and it's not an area I typically deal in, I would encourage you to talk to Anthony Romanello from Henrico. They have both of these programs, and it's very successful. And so that would be an area you could model. Loudoun's another one. There's a handful of counties that really have figured. I would say, let me say it differently. Everybody has one. I'll point to the ones that I hear from customers, are well administered, for lack of a better term. So I'm not throwing rocks at anybody else's. Those are the ones I hear from customers about. Next slide, John, please. And so just to give you an idea, it's typically there's a couple complaints you hear about data centers or some of these big technology firms. Probably number one complaint is, I really don't want to see the transmission. And on the left side, just for perspective, that's a substation sitting there. And if you have a substation, which is 5 to 7 acres, it has fences. You have to have transmission towers dropping into it. And you can see that on the left side, bottom left side. The vast majority of our data centers, well, actually, we serve all of them at a 230,000 volt transmission line. And so those towers in the bottom left going towards that substation, that's what it would look like for your sites on the corridor. Now, beautiful thing about the corridor, there's a lot more trees around it. So, and you don't see the buildings in the background on most of the I-64 corridor, but that's what it requires to bring in these, big high energy using technology firms. The right side is, depending on where you are, on the right side, the big tower to the left side of that picture, that's our 500,000 volt line. And next to it on the right side of that right picture is a 230,000 volt line. And so many times, if we need to move big blocks of power, we'll put both of those on the same right of way. And so that's for the right picture, bottom picture is more of a really dense market. So if you're really successful, we are as a team attracting data center markets, you will see something like the bottom right side of that page. I would rather tell you up front, because that's where some communities say, you know what, I don't think that's the right thing for our area. The trick to it in my mind is pick the areas in your county or locality where you're not near a lot of residential development. Maybe it's not visible because it's coming through the woods. It's not on a water because everybody wants to see water. You have to find the locations in your county where, hey, worst case scenario, this is what I'm going to see. And I hate to say it that way, but that's the way to think about picking properties. So that your political process in your county is smooth. But that's the way I would describe it. I'd rather be open and honest with you than paint a false picture. But that's what it takes to feed the data center industry, and hence why you typically have them clustering, so you don't have this all over the place. You typically like to have it in I'll say a technology park like Henrico has, or we have various technology parks. So go ahead, John. So what, as we develop this corridor, this is what I believe are the recipes from an infrastructure standpoint. What we hear from customers is you really need sites. You talked about the power's got to be close next to or easy to get power to the site. Fiber, Vinay will talk about that. And then they do need access to water. So obviously water utilities need to be somewhat close. There's a lot of talk in the industry about moving away from water. That is slow, it's happening slower than you hear about it. So you need to go into it thinking you need, access to water for cooling. The other thing I would tell you is data centers aren't the only answer in my mind for the corridor. There are a lot of other high-tech firms. So as we qualify sites, they don't all have to land a data center. If you get an advanced manufacturing firm or something else, once you have the site, the goal is let's put a high technology firm on there and create a vacuum or, as to where you're starting to attract other businesses. So my point is if it's a good data center site, it's probably a good industrial site or a big manufacturing site or something like that. A good site is a good site. And all of you know that do economic development, one of the first questions you get, well, how fast can you turn me on? It could be a 5,000 acre plant, but they want to know how fast can all of us turn that property on. It's typically the first question. And I think, John, this is all in our, the documents. I think you pointed to the website, but these are the types of things that come with attracting, if you will, the data center industry and other technology firms. Technology firms typically have very high paying salaries, and that's why a lot of folks like them.
Good.
Next slide, go ahead. So that's kind of, I did that quickly in the interest of time. So what other questions would you have of me? Scott?
Morning, Stan. That was really good.
Thank
I know Dominion does a lot of due diligence in that corridor. How many sweet spots do you see with the potential? Because I know that it requires certain infrastructure to build additional infrastructure. So how many sweet spots do you see that are suitable for Dominion side?
Yeah, it's kind of, there's a little bit of, Scott, there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg in there. And here's kind of the way I look at it. Dominion can go look at maps like anybody else and we can say, boy, this looks like a great site. But the community, locality where that is has to decide, is that what we want there? And so to me, the process is, as I laid out, if the localities along this corridor, here's the fiber network, what transmission in that area is close, and identify a handful of properties, us and fiber experts can come in, evaluate the property, say, hey, this is a really good piece of property. Because otherwise I may go pick a piece of property that I think's great and it's John's, grandma's farm that he's never, ever going to sell. And so typically we find the localities know those properties that you're just not going to touch, and they know the ones that are available. So we really need the localities to tell us, hey, look at these first, and then we can help qualify them. Going the other way just is, you end up going down paths that aren't effective. So I would answer it that way, Scott.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Stan, it reminds me of our conversation early on. We said that used to be a system in economic development called a certified economic development community. And they even had signs on the highway on 64, enter Louisa County, a certified economic development, because there was a punch list they all had to agree to be certified by the state, by the Department of Economic Development, the partnership now. So it's kind of one of the things that could potentially be some of the work in our plan or call for.
Yeah, and when when Loudon was growing, we used to certify, everybody was saying, hey, I want to be a data center site. And so we go qualify them and keep a list. Yeah. And we had a data center certification program. Well, the growth was coming so fast, we couldn't even certify properties fast enough. And that's what I guess in my mind, what we want to happen along this corridor. Yeah. So I think, I think some action items for us as a team is localities go think about, as I've laid out, fiber and power properties, big properties, And then we can come in and others, I think the counties have to come in and say, can I get water and sewer over here? You know, those are the types of things you consider to figure out what's the ideal property.
Yeah.
And again, creating technology parks, large swatches of land help in that effort as well.
Hey, David, you have your hand up.
Yes, do. Hi, Stan, David Harold, CarMax. Again, thank you. Great presentation. You talked a lot about transmission. I just had a question. You think there'd be any challenges with like generation and capacity to support what we're trying to do?
No, I don't. So we're not concerned that the issue in Loudon, I'll go back to that, is not a generation issue. Dominion is long in generation, or we actually have, if you will, when it's economically makes sense, depends on the power market, we actually export energy today. So the Loudon issue is not having to do with generation. It actually has to do with getting power into East Loudon. That's where the constraint is, and the electrons are concentrating on fewer lines that causes them to heat up. And we have to, that's what we're trying to address there. So no, it's not a generation issue for that, but a great question. We get that quite a bit. So great question.
And you don't think it would be an issue for this initiative either?
No, and I didn't answer the second half of your question, which was about a capacity. And so I think the difference is in Loudon, we were building the projects. Customers were building projects. And after the fact, we had to come in and say, whoa, wait a minute. The system is behaving in a manner that's not good. So we had to tell people to halt. We had to halt.
Mm-hmm.
Along this corridor, it's a little bit different. What we're going to do, we land a firm in James City County, and we say, look, it's 2 to 4 years. We're going to build this infrastructure, and we start doing that. And then somebody buys it next to them, and we'll say, oh, that one's 1 to 3 years build. It's very different, and so it's not a constraint. It's a construction timeline. You
Mhm.
follow me?
Yeah.
And we'll add capacity that way. It could be there are more rural areas of our system may only have 115,000 volt transmission system. Our next upgrade is to 30,000 volts. And so it may be some of these properties, we would have to upgrade the transmission system to bigger wires, bigger towers. But again, that's more of how long is it going to take us to build that, not, we have a capacity problem. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, David's question and your answer really point to the misperception that's out there. You know, I think the average layperson picked up that we don't have enough energy, and you really have set the record straight here.
Yeah, that is not the issue in Loudon.
All right, any other questions? Michael, you got your hand up?
He disappeared.
Yeah, Michael. I think you might be on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can
we
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Got me now? Okay, sorry about that. So thank you for the answers in the presentation. Just back on the energy question, you said you don't have a capacity or really a constraint issue other than maybe getting it to the last mile down to where the data centers would be. What about green energy? Because I think a big part of this market around data centers, we know they're huge energy consumers, but they're also looking to offset that in terms of their carbon footprint. So do we have opportunities in the market here to provide more green energy to go along with the transmissions?
Yeah, so let me make 2 comments and just make sure everybody knows. So everyone in Virginia, all of you on this call are connected to the grid. And that grid gets power from every source, whether it's an offshore wind, solar, nuclear, coal, gas, whatever generation is running is what you're pulling onto your meter. And so what firms do is they go, but I want to have green energy. Well, nobody has a business that I'm aware of that's running on 100% solar panels. Because if your business is open at night, you're not running. So what companies do is they're buying energy from Dominion or any other utility. And then they go out either with us or third-party firms and they contract to secure renewable energy certificates. It's a very simple way. And that's in essence how you green electricity, because they pay a premium to obtain those certificates. And how you generate certificates is if you build a solar field, that solar field produces electricity, which has value. And because it's a renewable source, every megawatt that is created produces a renewable energy certificate, and those have value. So when a company buys that renewable energy certificate, they're buying it from some renewable source and saying, that's how I green my electric usage. And that's fairly common. Some firms go out, typically your bigger ones, and they'll go out and fund solar facilities. They don't have to be directly connected to their facility. In fact, there's no large scale solar in Northern Virginia. The land's $3 million an acre and it's not an economic use. So if they develop solar fields, they're typically in areas where land doesn't cost as much. And so they're directly contracting for that, putting that power on the grid and making use of those renewable energy certificates. That's how in reality, how energy is greened. Now at Dominion, we have 2 nuclear plants. It used to be 5 years ago, people would say all these corporate entities were chasing renewable energy. That's changed, and now people are chasing carbon-free energy. And nuclear is not a renewable, but it is carbon-free energy. And we've seen a big shift in the technology industry where they like carbon-free energy. And today, about 40% of what we put into the state is coming from our existing nuclear facilities. And so we're day one, you're all getting 40% of your industry or your energy is carbon free. So
Yeah, I
now
think that
I
was.
will say this, every firm has a different definition for their sustainability goals. So, you know, some say, a few of them say, I don't count nuclear energy. Most of them do because they're chasing carbon. So it's a mixed bag of how they go about it.
Yeah, and I think that'll normalize over time a little bit. And I think maybe the key here is, because I think, you know, I'm with Bank of America and we had some challenges working directly with Dominion on this years ago. So I think it's important that we look and find ways to kind of bundle it together and not send folks to a second or third party to kind of offset whatever their requirements are. But thank you. Appreciate that, Stan.
No, fair comments. Thank you.
All right, let's just
Vinay?
do one more,
Go
Vinay.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, my question was related to sustainability, Stan, and you kind of addressed most of what I wanted to touch upon. But one particular thing, if you can comment on, because as you were talking about, every data center provider has their own carbon, not only neutrality, but carbon negative goals, right? They want to, be able to generate clean energy, send it back to the grid. Now, Dominion has its own, carbon neutrality goals as well. How do you balance out, in terms of what the customers, the data center providers in particular, are asking you for, versus, Dominion as an organization and your own carbon neutrality goals?
Yeah, so great question, Vinay. And the simple answer is it's a function of timing. So many of these high technology firms, data center industry, they either want to be carbon free today, or they have very aggressive goals to be carbon free in 5 years, especially the very large ones, or they want to be carbon negative. And so they want it immediately. We're building regulated assets, big regulated assets. Offshore wind is an example, that's a renewable source, onshore solar. And so what you find is we can't build it fast enough to meet their needs. And so that's why in most cases, they're going out kind of to the Bank of America question. There may be better solutions in the open market and why they're going there. But as we implement the Virginia Clean Economy Act, in about 15 years, Dominion is going to be about 75% carbon free in 15 years. And so what I articulate to customers is, if John's goal, his company's goal is to be carbon free today, he's probably going to secure that the greening of his electricity through some other avenue. And then as Dominion greens the grid, John would back off those contracts because it's already inherent in the electricity he's buying. So back to my point, if I'm putting out 40% of our generation today is coming out as nuclear, which is carbon free, John wanted to be, in my example, 100% carbon free today. He's only got to theoretically go cover 60% of it. In my simple example. Well, if I've got 10% solar today, then John goes, okay, I got 40% nuclear, that's carbon free. I got another 10% solar. So now I've only got to go green 50%. And so to me, it's how do you match up your company, that customer's goal, and how we're going to lay generation, carbon-free generation onto the system. And they're a little out of sync due to timing, but that's the way you go about it.
And just real quick, do you find yourself at times, whether it's the data center operators or even hyperscalers who are obviously building, operating their own data centers, do you find yourself, in situations where you find like both of you, entities are sort of competing for those renewables, for that matter, Stan?
Yeah, some of the largest, I'll say, in the data center industry, they are going out and securing their own, most of them are securing their own solar in Virginia. And so, but we have a mandate from the state to build a lot of solar in the state. And so sometimes we find there's a great piece of property. John wants to sell grandma's farm, and perhaps Dominion's bidding on it to put solar there. Perhaps one of these big cloud providers is doing the same. And it's just a business transaction. There's no animosity. It's just arm's length negotiating. So we do see that occasionally, really from the very large ones. Most of the technology firms, other than the big titans, aren't pursuing that approach.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Stan. Thank you so much for all the insights you're sharing with us. I think in the interest of time, though, I want to move us on. But I think speak for you to say any other questions that people have, we can get them to you and you can answer them. We'll push them back out to the whole group.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Thank you for being part of the steering committee and the core team that really came up with this whole idea of the steering committee and for putting even funds in from Dominion to help support this plan. Okay, so we're going to move on to looking at the current assets and maybe right around over the horizon some additional digital assets to come. We're going to hear from Anthony first, and then from Ray, and really just give us an overview of what's happening there. So, Anthony, I'm going to turn to you. I think everybody knows you from this group. Thank you for your leadership in all of this.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everybody. We have a 3-minute video that I'll use up 30% of my time with that. There's too many slides for 10 minutes, and I know Laura will send this to everyone, so I just offer it up to you as part of your resource bank. So I will roll through the rest of the slides relatively quickly to make sure that Vinay and Ray have plenty of time. And a number of these slides, I do want to give Vinay credit because I have completely plagiarized his work to share this with you all today. Here's the first one, but just really quickly, if you think about a typical laptop is going to have about a 1 terabyte drive. And if anybody's wondering if we're going to continue to grow data in the world, there's about 700 terabytes of new data created every minute in the world. And that data has to go somewhere, and it's going in the cloud. If we can go to the next slide, please, John, and play the video. If you've seen this video, I apologize. As you're watching, please think of your favorite quadratic equation.
Right. And adjust your volume accordingly.
This is a global journey, but you won't need your passport. In fact, you'll never leave your chair. But we'll go to all corners of the world in fractions of a second, and we'll start in Henrico, Virginia. Have your attention? Good, because this is big. It's about reach, data speeds, and business opportunity, and what our region's internet infrastructure can do to revolutionize business and supercharge your digital transformation. This is the business world of today. Thanks to the integration with DKIX, the world's leading provider of interconnection services, Henrico and its business community is in the same conversation with New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Phoenix as part of the largest interconnection ecosystem in North America. With DKIX, in 1/3 of a second, the time of a single blink, your data can go to Spain and back. In 2 milliseconds, 2 normal flashes of a camera send your data to 80% of the US population. For area businesses, this means heightened visibility on an international stage and a premier global data hub right in their backyard. The world gets closer because data can now go farther and faster. We're talking unrestricted data communications with business epicenters and emerging markets worldwide in milliseconds. And it's all made possible by leveraging Henrico's existing subsea cable connections located at the QTS Richmond Network Access Point, NAP. Here, you can gain access to Dunant, which extends to France and offers a record-breaking 250 terabits per second capacity. That's fast enough to transmit the entire digitized Library of Congress 3 times every second. In addition, tap into Marea, BRUSA, and SAEX1, which extend to Puerto Rico, Brazil, Spain, and South Africa. And it gets better, because this is the business world of tomorrow. Through integration of the QTS Richmond NAP and the DKIX exchange, businesses will have instantaneous access to more than 2,300 network operators and 500 data centers across the globe. And that list is growing. Most impressively, this integration with DKIX is data center neutral and carrier neutral, but only in Henrico. We are offering open access to a data autobahn where you can drive your business towards success. We hope you enjoyed this international expedition. Let's talk more.
So thanks, John. You can go to the next slide. And of course, this video was paid for by the taxpayers of Henrico County, but everybody knows that none of this happens without the investment that Virginia Beach has made in the undersea cables and our partners in bringing that terrestrial fiber up and down Interstate 64. There were some questions earlier. I think Stan covered this really well about the sustainability efforts of our partners in the digital infrastructure. You can go to the next one. Again, these are just resources for you to see some of the consolidation in the data center industry. I would draw your attention to QTS, which does have a major presence both in Ashburn and in Henrico. They were bought by Blackstone last year. Blackstone is the largest owner of commercial real estate in the world. You can go to the next slide. Vinay is going to talk about subsea cables, so I will skip this. Global internet hubs. If you want to just go from this slide to the next one, please, John. This is some information about the subsea cables as well as the DKIX exchange. And Scott Brown, I know, is on the call, and I hope you'll forgive me, Scott. But if you have a chance to visit Scott at the Pixel Factory Data Center in Ashland, that's one of the 3 locations of the DKIX Richmond exchange. QTS and EdgeConneX are the other 2. But Scott is absolutely brilliant. And in fact, we went to the same high school. I'm not sure what happened to me, but Scott did really well for himself. And but just go tour that facility and see what they're doing there. It really is phenomenal. You can go to the next one, please, John. 5 years ago, there was no transmission of data through the subsea cables through Virginia Beach and Henrico. Today, that's 18% of the capacity on the East Coast is going through Henrico, through Virginia Beach. And with the Confluence cable that's going to connect New York and New Jersey all the way to Miami, and instead of doing it down the 95 corridor, doing it out in the Atlantic, we're going to see that number increase pretty substantially. You can go to the next one, please. I talked about DKIX, and you saw that in the video, so we can skip that one too, please, John. Here's some good statistics that Vinay has put together in terms of the time it takes for the data to move. So these are all milliseconds or thousandths of a second. So from Ashburn to Henrico is just under 4
milliseconds from Henrico to Brazil is just over 1/10 of 1 second. Go to the next one. You can see where we are with the DKIX exchange and how we're connected to 23 countries and 4 continents. And what I would just mention to everybody here is when is Richmond, when is the RVA 757 region ever in the conversation with New York, Chicago, Dallas, and Phoenix? And this is one of the things that's going to be a big differentiator for us, all NFL cities. And now we're in a league with those guys. You can go to the next one, please. So on the 8th of November, everyone is invited at the Short Pump Hilton. Vince Cerf, who is one of the inventors of the internet, will be speaking. He's the chief internet evangelist for Google, and Vint will be our keynote speaker at the event on November 8th at the Short Pump Hilton. You can go to the next slide. You may remember back in I'm sorry, one more, John, I'm jumping around a bit. Back in 2019, QTS held the first IEIC, or Internet Innovation Ecosystem Committee summit at their location here at White Oak Technology Park. And we're having the second one, got delayed a little bit by the pandemic, but we're having the second one on November 8th. Everyone is welcome to join us. If you go back one, please, John, you'll see this is the IEIC board members that are involved. VCU is involved, and you'll see a number of real corporate heavyweights there, and give a lot of credit to Vinay and his colleague Clint Hayden, who have put this together. I should mention that one of the keynote speakers also at the event on the 8th of November will be Ivo Ivanov, who was just promoted. He's been with DKIX and been in a very senior position. Ivo was just promoted to their international CEO, and he'll be with us then. And then, John, you can jump forward to keep going, please, to the next one, the White Oak Technology Park. As you all are aware, Stan mentioned this, and appreciate the commercial from our partners at Dominion. It's a 2,300 acre master plan, publicly owned industrial park. On the next slide, you'll see what's there today and our partners there that are at the industrial park. About $12 million in annual tax revenue, 6 million square feet. Those numbers are going to increase substantially over the next couple of years. And you'll see right now the construction that's underway that Meta has with their facilities on both sides of Technology Boulevard, as well as the recent announcement by QTS of a 1.5 million square foot expansion of their facilities in White Oak. We continue to hear from folks who are looking for additional data center assets in Henrico and in the region. And the only thing I wish I had was more land. As Stan mentioned, we have the infrastructure in place. There used to be a semiconductor plant there 20 years ago, which positioned us well from an infrastructure standpoint, because the semiconductor plants, as well as data centers, are big energy and water and sewer users. So that set us up nicely for additional data centers to come into the park. And we anticipate there'll be further growth there. And then the last slide is just an aerial view of the White Oak Technology Park and some of our partners there. And stay tuned for future announcements as we continue to grow in White Oak. And I'll stop there, John.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Anthony. Why don't we just open it up for questions and comments? I'll leave this prettier slide up while we do that. So any questions for Anthony and what's going on in Henrico? Well, this is the first for me to see no questions for Anthony. Anthony, it means you're covering every topic.
I'll stick around if anybody thinks of one. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, terrific. Let's move on then. And Raymond White, Business Development Coordinator, Virginia Beach, Economic Development. Ray, get us up to speed on what's happening with Virginia Beach.
Good morning, everyone. So glad to join you today and have this opportunity to kind of give a review to some of you regarding what we've done, but for others, catch you up to date of what's happening. Next, John. As Anthony indicated earlier, right now we have 3 subsea cables that land on our coast in Virginia Beach, the Maria, the Brusa, and the Dunnet that come from Spain, France, and South America. And Telxius developed a cable landing station here when those hit the shore. All of those go into there, and then from there onward to other locations. Shortly after that happened, Global Links, Virginia Beach company here, opened a facility in our corporate landing business park, a carrier type hotel where folks can connect in to the resources that we have coming into our coast now. And they've been highly successful with their effort and have future expansion plans that I'll be sharing with you momentarily. Also, as you've seen on previous slides, the Confluence One subsea cable will be landing in Virginia Beach 2024, maybe 2025. That period is what we're looking at right now. And again, it provides traffic from New York to Miami and various stops in between. So again, another tremendous asset that will be landing here in Virginia Beach and most likely connecting in our corporate landing business park also. And then the latest development is a project that we've been working on for a few years, the SAEX project, and that's a cable that will be coming from South Africa. And so from South Africa to Virginia Beach here will be the end, but also it will have another connection from South Africa to Singapore. So that will certainly connect us from the Far East all the way to Virginia Beach via South Africa. It looks like they've secured the funding now. And again, we're looking forward to them starting that project here in the next couple of years. And we'll certainly open up things to most all of the world once they get that in running. So I wanted to share with you a minute. You know, this industry certainly, you don't have to look further than Ashburn to see what it's done up in that area as far as the community and helping to lower tax rates for the citizens. But, you know, for us to be a player in that, our tax rate used to be $4 for data center business property, and we've lowered that to 40 cents to again, to lower the threshold of where companies can locate here in our community. Another key asset we have is the first 2 years of operations of opening a business in Virginia Beach. We've capped the business license tax to $50. And then we've got a effort through our development and planning folks that once you have a project, you come in and we bring various leaders of departments in the city together to learn about your project earlier on, to help streamline the project as that goes on. Our corporate landing business park is a Dominion Energy certified park, and that's been very important for several of the companies that we've attracted, that they have the infrastructure there to meet the current needs and some of the needs also moving into the future. A key area is, yes, obviously Virginia Beach is on the coast, but our cable landing station and our business park is about 3 miles inland from the coast. And it's outside of a 100-year storm event. So if we had the big one hit, you know, again, it's far enough from the coast that with storm surge and all, you're not going to get some of the situations that certainly are happening right now down in Florida, in the Venice area down there and surrounding areas. So that's a key element too. Also, we have the infrastructure within this park. We've even strengthened the infrastructure on stormwater requirements and all to make it over and above what's required. So again, that's just another layer of safety and security we've provided as far as that's concerned. So again, talked a little bit about the stormwater infrastructure in it. Wanted to switch gears on some new coastal cable landing locations right now. Sand Bridge area, which is in the south part of Virginia Beach. Our city council has recently approved 4 new manhole sites there to bring new cables in. So that provides excess capabilities on what we have now. There's still 1 site remaining from the initial 3 where we're hoping to get another cable in, most likely from Google. I think they're the ones that are controlling that particular site at this point in time. And then talking to our legal team here at the city, they feel the possibility also is to land more cables in the Camp Pendleton area, which our first 3 land in. And so we're certainly going to be pursuing that and provide other alternatives to land additional cables into our ocean front. One thing we've done with our corporate landing business park is that we've developed a infrastructure. The city itself has invested over $1.2 million to put conduits within the business park to make sure, especially on a project that wants to get up and running quickly, that we have additional conduit systems within that's in control by the city. The city is in control. So again, we can make it available to whomever's interested in that, and just provides a built-in resource to that particular park. Mentioned Global Links earlier, that has a center. John, if you could go back one more time. Again, they've got capabilities in the park right now. Have another facility designed and the land secured right next to it to expand that as new opportunities come into our ocean front. So again, we're willing and ready to grow from what we have, and certainly many opportunities on other projects too. So looking ahead, one thing that our region has done is they've really invested several of our Southside communities and the opportunities that we have due to the subsea cables coming in. And they're developing a broadband connectivity ring that at first will cover the Southside cities here in Hampton Roads. Certainly the peninsula is not going to be left out as time goes on to connect them into that. And again, that's going to basically open up our entire region to utilize and have the potential to connect into the fastest speeds globally right here in Virginia Beach in our region. I had mentioned our 4 new cable landing sites. The next point that's really exciting for us is about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now, NAS Oceana, as many of you know, is our master jet air station here in Virginia Beach. They were having some issues as far as maintaining their facilities, especially their non-essential facilities within the base. Keeping them maintained, the buildings, the hangars, and so forth, because the federal government just wasn't provided enough funding to do that. So they approached the city here and talked to us and said, look, one of the assets we have that we'd love to work together with you on is that we have roughly 1,000 acres around our area that we own both inside and outside of the gate. And we would love for the business community, for you guys to engage the business community and put appropriate type businesses that could locate in that area. Now, obviously, you don't want high density businesses. You don't want high rise facilities there by the airstrip, but certainly data centers, warehousing, distribution, those type of operations don't require a lot of density as far as people's concerned, but yet you've got 1,000 acres there to be able to build these new facilities. This location is about 1 mile as the crow flies from our corporate landing business park, so it's very near that. And again, with Dominion Energy and the offshore wind coming in several years, we feel that's a great asset to connect and provide opportunity for those folks into that area. And then another offshore wind project that we haven't mentioned at this point in time is the Avangrid Renewable offshore project, which is about the same size of what Dominion's building off our coast, but this is just below our coast off of Kitty Hawk. And that power is going to be landing in Virginia Beach also. Those wind those wind turbines. And again, another resource that altogether between Dominion and Avangrid is going to provide over 5 gigawatts of wind energy that will be coming in. I'm sure that both Dominion and Avangrid would welcome the opportunity to provide some of this energy to the data centers and the like that come into our area. And new facilities right now are under design. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 data centers that have options on land right now that are finalizing some agreements with customers to come in that will bring in additional cables also. So we're really excited about them getting up and running, and with the new landing sites at Sandbridge, potentially more at Camp Pendleton, we think that's going to happen here in the not too distant future.
That's great.
So I wanted to close this and that I've recently announced here at the City of Virginia Beach that I will be retiring next month, the middle of next month. I've been in economic development for over 27 years now, 10 years with the City of Hampton, 10 years in Virginia Beach, and 7 years down in Northeast North Carolina. And but I'm not going to go away. I promised John I'll still be an active member of the steering committee, still provide my expertise and insights, and then probably, again, I'm just retiring from government work. I'll still be out there working a lot of projects with the business community, hopefully a lot more here within this industry and offshore wind that I've intimately been involved with. Cybersecurity is another area that certainly plays into what we're doing here. So again, not going to spend my time on the front porch rocking every day. I'll be out there amongst everyone and looking forward to continuing my relationship with this group and also the RVA 757 Connects. And I'm passing the baton here to my associate, Charlie Bauman. I have to give kudos to Charlie. He's been in economic development for just about as long as I have. I started out with the City of Norfolk and then was with the Port of Virginia and their economic development team. Worked over at Kaufman and Knowles Consulting for a few years, consulting them, providing services on economic development, and then ran an economic development entity for a county down in North Carolina. So we've had him up here in Virginia Beach for, I guess, going on 6 years now. And I think it's going to be a smooth transition, hanging things off to him. Again, I know he'll do a great job. And like I said, I'll be here to help them and certainly support not only the efforts of Virginia Beach, but now broaden that for the entire Hampton Roads region and the entire mega region, which I've been involved with since basically Tom Front started that, one of the first conversations we had when he came up with that idea. So I'm looking forward certainly to working with everyone on that regards.
Well, Ray, thank you for that great overview. We'll open up for questions, but we're delighted that you're going to stay on and make us a priority in your retirement. And we all, many of us know Charlie and really welcome his expertise and passion to our cause. So thank you on behalf of everybody, and we're glad you're going to stay with us. So before we move on, let's open it up to any questions about Virginia Beach. And I will say that Ray mentioned the fiber network ring. We're going to go deeper on that in a future meeting. I know Bob Crumb's on the line and Stephen DeBerry, and so their expertise will go deep when we really focus on terrestrial networks in a future event. But please ask any questions of Ray right now on what you've heard or where Virginia Beach is headed. Vinay?
John, I have a comment, more of a comment than a question. Ray, I wanted to take this opportunity to really thank you for a great leadership role that you have personally taken in Virginia Beach and for the region in terms of supporting the subsea industry and with some of the new areas that you have instituted and being such an active member of the community and the industry as well. I very, very vividly remember, I think it was almost 3 PTCs ago when you were walking from one building to the other, and I ran into you, and we just started talking about so many different things. And since then, there's a lot that has developed in Virginia Beach, and you have played such an active role both within the community and externally as well, in terms of communicating to the industry and being the face of Virginia Beach. So I applaud you for taking that leadership role, and look forward to continuing to work with you and of course with Charles as well. So thank you.
Well, you're certainly welcome, Vinay. It's certainly been a pleasure and will continue to be so. And again, the thing about this whole effort is that it's really a team effort, and I somewhat came into this as a handoff from my previous colleague, Rob Houdon, who unfortunately passed away from disease about 4 or 5 years ago, and the team that really laid the groundwork for this. So it was a team effort on our end to get us where we are. I just took the ball, as using a football analogy, and just kept on running with it. But again, thank you, Vinay, and others for all your support, and we'll just keep pushing the ball forward, as they say.
You literally ran all the way to Hawaii, Ray, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see anybody's hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to second a little bit of what Vinay said. I'm Gary Tarpley with Metro Fiber Networks. And Ray, I appreciate all the stuff you've done for me when I took the endeavor to build a network from the site there before Telxius built their building to build a fiber network up to QTS. And you gave me a lot of support and encouragement to do that. And I want to applaud you for everything you've done, and appreciate it very much. And I know a lot of us do as well.
Well, you're certainly welcome, Gary, and you bring up a key point, because a lot of the folks we talk to say, okay, you've got these cables coming to Virginia Beach, how are they going to get to other locations? Well, it's Gary and other folks that are interested in the terrestrial infrastructure that really make that happen. So we certainly can't underplay the importance of the terrestrial, the land runs from Virginia Beach to Richmond to Ashburn, and potentially to many other locations as this whole industry continues to develop. So thank you, Gary, for what you've done so far and continue to do also.
And if I may real quick piggyback on that, I think, Ray, it's absolutely, companies like Gary and the leadership role Gary has taken in the important terrestrial fiber deployment along the route, and constantly looking for diversifying that as well. But the public-private partnership aspect, Ray, obviously is so crucial when it comes to landing of these cables. I mean, there are so many complexities involved, as you're very well aware. So I think that public-private partnership goes a long way, both for subsea and for terrestrial fiber as well.
Yep. All right. Well, we're gonna keep moving forward. No other questions for Ray. And again, if you have some, just send them to us, and we'll make sure that they get answered, and we'll distribute it to the group. And as you're hearing this, just think about other content you want us to build into our meetings. Really trying to paint the whole picture here. So we're starting with the two ends of the mega region, and we'll go from there. So moving on to the next topic. This is really just kind of timely in that Vinay just got back from the latest conference on deep sea cables and global internet hubs. And you've heard Vinay speak a few times at this meeting. He's really kind of a guru on this topic, and the president of Interglobix, which is a consultancy and produces an industry publication. But he's also a founding member of the Internet Ecosystem Innovation Committee. So that second meeting of that group, and you saw those players from Anthony's slides, is meeting in Henrico County, and it was really one of the brainchild kind of ideas of Vinay. And when he's not trying to make a living, he's also volunteering for the Northern Virginia Technology Council Data Center and Cloud Community, sort of an association up there. So anyway, we're really lucky to have Vinay spend time with us on this project. And personally, I just want to thank him, because this whole project was really inspired by this meeting we had a year ago in Williamsburg, where Renee lined up two guys from Marseille who piped in for our convergence meeting, the Chamber's sponsored meeting. And those guys said, this is how Marseille got on the map. And one of the key secrets was we put a plan together. a strategic plan, pulling a lot of the players together to think down the road, because as you heard from Stan, it takes time. And so these are some pictures from that meeting. But Vinay, thank you for lining up those experts and then featuring our meeting in your publication. So share with us what you've learned at this 25th annual Submarine Networks conference.
Absolutely, John. Happy to do that. And hello, everyone. As John said, my name is Vinay Nagpal. I'm the president of Finaglobix. We do strategic business consulting for the convergence of data centers and subsea cables. And thank you, John, for the opportunity to present today. I really appreciate in the previous slide, the picture you had of me. I wish I could still look the same. I have a lot less hair now, and my reading glasses has become a way of life. And speaking of the Marseille meeting in Williamsburg that we had, John, I must say that as I'm here to talk about some of the lessons learned from Singapore, from the submarine networks world, which is the world's leading annual subsea industry gathering. One of the people there was one of the presenters, John, Mike Hollins from Interaction. And Mike and I had lunch, and we were talking about his presentation, and we had the gentleman from Port of Marseille, and they were quite pleased to hear about how we've kind of taken on this initiative. And I shared with Mike. So probably early next year, when we have made some more progress, Mike will be happy to give a further update on their progress. I just teed that up with him just to share with everyone. But back to the conference. The good part about this conference is like it's very, very widely attended in terms of the various subsectors of the digital infrastructure industry, from obviously subsea to data centers to terrestrial fiber, and of course internet exchange points as well. There was a lot of emphasis on some of the new projects. I mean, currently there are 530 cables worldwide, from a subsea perspective, roughly representing around 1.3 million kilometers of subsea cables, which is upwards of 807,000 miles. So there was a good mix of vendors, equipment manufacturers like Ciena, subsea cable manufacturers who are actually manufacturing the cables, feasibility study companies, who do these feasibility analysis on anytime you want to land a subsea cable, various different companies that own and operate ships that are doing route surveys and desktop studies. And of course, you had the data center industry quite well represented in terms of data center operators. And then you had hyperscalers as well, to the likes of, Facebook or Meta, Microsoft, Googles of the world that were there. And a plethora of, consultants who are super specialized in this industry when it comes to kind of, handling a variety of different areas within the subsea digital infrastructure sector. Moving on to the next slide, John. Telegeography was one of my sort of favorite presentations where Alan, who was one of the key speakers, talked about, what's happening around us at a macro level, right? I mean, enterprises are constantly moving to the cloud, and whether it's the public cloud, private cloud, or a combination thereof, there's a lot of focus on hybrid cloud services. And when it comes to, of course, Telegeography being an independent research firm, they took a very cloud neutral view. What you see on this map is various different locations around the world that are showing cloud deployments by Amazon, Alibaba, Microsoft, Google, Oracle, Tencent. And at the end of the day, I mean, the cloud data centers are obviously housing very high compute intensive data on the servers, and interconnecting these locations globally is where the subsea cables and the terrestrial fiber companies come into play. And then, of course, there was discussion around the consumer use of cloud services, right? I mean, as an end user, how often we're using services like Gmail, Office 365, and others. So there was a good discussion around that in terms of how cloud services are propelling this growth of data that Anthony talked about. In the next slide, when we look at what's happening around the overall bandwidth globally, right? So there's obviously incremental constant growth happening in terms of incremental international bandwidth. But at the same time, if we look at what are the primary demand drivers for it, right? You have constant increase in number of internet users globally, cloud adoption. We talked about some of the new applications. Anytime you hear about, whether it's the edge, whether it's AI, whether it's big data, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, at the end of the day, you've got to have more bandwidth utilization. You need more back end digital infrastructure. You need more subsea cables. You need more terrestrial fiber cables and data centers. So it's all integrated. It's all tied down together. One company which I thought was quite interesting, moving on to the next slide, was RTI Cables. They're a subsea cable company, and they have a new sort of a trans-Pacific neutral triangle that they call primarily connecting LA, which is one of the global internet hubs, to Tokyo, to Guam, and really kind of aligning the subsea cable routes with world's largest data center. So they're completely data center neutral, obviously. They're a subsea operator. They're selling capacity to hyperscalers and to end users. And diversity was key, right? So Guam, as a sort of strategic location, is evolving to be a major gaming hub. North of Guam, you see is Japan. You got Australia in the south, and really it becomes a central hub for connecting the U.S., the West Coast to U.S. to Asia. So the Trans-Pacific Neutral Triangle is sort of a confluence of cable landing station, data centers, to primarily enable cloud connectivity. I talked about equipment manufacturers. So moving on to the next slide, Ciena is one of the leading equipment manufacturers. When we talk about dark fiber, that's physical fiber like this cable I'm holding in my hand. When we talk about lit fiber, that's where you have these equipment manufacturers who are placing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment at both ends, whether it's the terrestrial fiber operator or subsea operators. And a couple of interesting points there. This particular slide, it's more symbolic, and I kept it there to show you in the picture that in 1995, if you look at what's represented in this slide, you really need 10 cabinets worth of equipment to support 400 gigabits per second traffic. And that's, by the way, to put it in perspective, if at our home we have Verizon Fios, that's 1 gig, so it's 400 times more capacity. In 1995, you needed 10 cabinets for that. Now in 2022, you have small cards which kind of fit on the size of a palm of your hand to support the same 400 gigs worth of traffic. So as you can see, there's more processing, more innovation happening on the hardware sector, more emphasis on open cable systems like the Maria cable, which is the first subsea cable to land on the Commonwealth of Virginia. And of course, like we heard from Stan and the data center industry, on the subsea side and all the equipment manufacturer side as well, there's an ongoing focus on sustainability. Another company in the next slide that I want to highlight is Meta or Facebook. Obviously, Facebook has a mega campus here in our region in Henrico. And thank you, Kelly. I see Kelly's on the call. Thank you, Kelly, for giving such a fun tour of the facility the other day. I talk about it all the time. And if you haven't had a chance to do that, it's a great facility to tour in Henrico and White Oak Tech Park. But again, back to the conference, there's a lot of focus on diversity. There's a lot of focus on capacity. Facebook is a major player in Africa, which is, imagine the scale of economic growth, let alone the technological feat of connecting 33 countries, across 3 continents using one single fiber cable. And by the way, that's a 24-pair fiber cable, the largest one yet. And to put it in perspective, the Maria subsea cable, again, the first one to land in the Commonwealth of Virginia, was an 8-pair system, which, yes, has its capacity upgraded a couple of times to 200 terabits per second. And by the way, I talked earlier about gigabits per second. 1,000 gigabits per second is 1 terabit per second. So 400 times, 1,000 times that. So 400,000 times more capacity than the Fios connection that Verizon offers you at home or your businesses, right? So prior to that, Juno is another system, which is a 20 fiber pair system. So what you're seeing is that the industry is moving towards diversity, bigger fiber count, more capacity. Moving on to the next slide. I mentioned earlier about John, about Mike Holland from Interaction from Marseille. So one of the things Mike and I were talking about is that, you know, they're on track to have 21 subsea cables, 21 by end of 2024, supporting upwards of 1,000 plus terabits per second. Mike has actually moved on to a bigger investment related role, and his peer, who you see presenting here, Bill, is now the Interaction's new subsea connectivity person. And again, they have, like mentioned earlier, focus on diversity. They plan to have 10 new subsea cables as a company by the end of 2024. From a region perspective, Pan-Africa, in places like Lagos, Durban, Mombasa, Maputo, there's more focus there. And of course, the public-private partnership plays a key role as they look at combining subsea routes with terrestrial fiber routes. Speaking of Africa, the next slide really shows another system that was represented, which is the Med-USA, which really connects European countries in the southern part of Europe, so Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Greece, with North Africa. So again, connecting two continents together, multiple countries involved. The key here is open access, fully neutral. So when we talk about, you know, having open access, so you can have different equipment manufacturers' equipment on both sides of the cable based on, you know, who the specific owners are for various fibers within the cable, and they can basically run their network completely independent of each other. I had the opportunity to lead one session, moving on to the next slide, which was focused on hyperscalers and subsea. Again, a great topic, as we all know. You know, basically hyperscalers are continuing their significant investment in data centers hand in hand with subsea. One of the topics of discussion, and Stan touched a little bit on that, was when we talk about hyperscale data centers, electricity is a major part of data centers in general, right? So one interesting point of discussion there was when we talk about sustainability practices, currently 3%, so Stan mentioned 20% of Virginia's electricity is consumed by data centers. 3% of the world's electricity is consumed by data centers worldwide today. By 2030, that number will be 12%. So from 3 to 12% in the next 7-8 years is actually a significant jump if you think about global energy consumption. And there were other discussion points there as well in terms of different geographies, different regions, so on and so forth. And lastly, our publishing part of the business, we were a media partner. So as John mentioned, the article that was published about the Global Internet Hub, the mega region, that particular issue was shared with all the attendees of the conference as well. With that, I'm happy to take any questions at this time, but if not, thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Vinay. Thank you for sharing that. And you left out all the color of what you did in between the meetings and how much fun that was. All right, any questions or comments for Vinay? I'll tell you one comment that I have is, like, people always ask me, yeah, but the satellites are going to take over all of this. The cables aren't going to be relevant. And boy, I think just from these past few slides, you could easily see that's not true.
FCC statistic is 0.3% of global internet traffic passes through satellite. Satellites are great for a particular niche, for serving a particular niche, but yeah, 99.7% of all international traffic is via physical cables. I see a hand there.
Yeah, Scott.
Vinay, I like to call you the Oracle of subsea. And we've got all these cables coming in from different continents. How much of a factor do you think the Confluent cable is going to help this region? Because it's basically going to give a diverse path to major markets that this region, that no other region is going to have.
To be very candid with you, the Confluence cable will have an impact on the entire East Coast of US. As John mentioned in his opening comment, right, going from New York all the way to Miami with various branching units. And by the way, those branching units, of course, there's one in Virginia Beach, but you also have a couple other regions as well. And what that offers is the ability to grow that infrastructure, that ecosystem, whatever the cable is touching land, but at the same time, offer diversity. Like you will start seeing routes, where even the current cables in Miami will start, potentially sending traffic through Confluence back out through Virginia Beach to other parts of the world, and similarly from New York. So it offers diversity previously unthought of. It offers scalability when it comes to the overall capacity. And of course, on purely speaking, Scott, on the terrestrial fiber side, it's a completely diverse route, not just diverse from the existing I-95 corridor, but also with a lot more terrestrial fiber capacity as well, if I might call it. I mean, it's kind of a little weird, like terrestrial fiber in the ocean, but you know what I mean. So it's really multiple. It's got multiple dimensions to it, and we'll see that as a very successful system in years to come.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, again, anybody that has another question, just send it to us, and I know Vinay will be happy to answer it, and we'll push it back out. We've got 15 minutes left. I really want to thank our speakers, Stan and Anthony and Ray and Vinay. Thank you guys so much for your expertise and willing to share. And we'll keep the sharing going in future meetings. I do want to talk about hiring the consultants to help us. And just to give you a quick refresher, thank you, Go Virginia, for a grant, $100,000. We had to have matching money. And we have this core group that had formed to kind of figure out where do we go from the Marseille conference a year ago, called the Marseille conference in Williamsburg. But this core group, as soon as we had the opportunity with Go Virginia, immediately put in money. So we've got $160,000. We also have significant in-kind money from RVA 757 Connects all the time. We're spending on this in-kind in the chambers who are on this call today, Chamber RVA and Hampton Roads Chamber. So our core planning group as well, maybe additional money comes in as we get even more specific on our plan, on to spend it and get the right consultants in here. Remember in the last meeting in Williamsburg, we talked about where do we want to allocate our resources, and we had 3 different buckets, and you guys prioritized. We got to understand how the ratings and ranking systems work, or system by telegeography. They really have a corner on this, and they come out every year with the rankings. So where do we stack, and what is their system? How does it work? And what do they think of us once they start to look at us? So we've been, that was number one. Number two was we got to get the case studies down and talk to the top 10 global internet hubs like we did with Marseille, but really try to understand how did they get on the map? What was their intentionality in their development and becoming a global internet hub? Did it just happen by accident, or was there some method to their madness? And who were those people, and what did they do? So we want to spend our resources on getting to each one and doing a white paper and connecting the dots. So what are the lessons learned for us in moving towards becoming a really designated global internet hub? But we have all said from the beginning of this, just that journey is going to help us in and of itself. The designation is the gravy. And then the third area, we said, let's park this for now, but this is going deep on certain topics. Let's wait until we see what these first 2 do. And so that was the consensus of our group a month ago. We really wanted to think about the resources against this. If we got 160,000 in the bank, so to speak, we're going to spend about a third, or a third on the first 2, and then just sort of put in reserve that last number 3. And we're going to spend a little bit of money supporting our meetings, and part of the Go Virginia grant was that we have a legacy website. So the project website you see is the first phase of that, but we really want to end this whole process with inventorying all the studies and reports. And thank you to those who have sent some in to us. We just posted them on our website, the project website. Any other report that you see needs to be posted there, but we'll end up turning that in with our final report to Go Virginia as part of our contract. But this is roughly where we are. And we started talking to, the telegeography see if they were interested in this. With the person we're talking to, unfortunately, got COVID and slowed us down a little bit. But we've put together a request for proposal document that was sent to you in advance. It's posted on the project website. It really presents an overview of these three areas, but most importantly, the first two: the scope of work for number one and number two. And then the growing list of questions that you guys in the last meeting weighed in on, the questions that we started off with as straw man questions for each one of the 10 characteristics. And that list has expanded from your expertise and perspectives. Virginia Beach has a number of questions that they've added to it. So this is the document that we are going to use to actually solicit these proposals. And this is the scope of work for number one. I'm not going to go through it. It's really just getting to the understanding, what is that rating system? How does it work and rank hubs, global internet hubs? And really, there's kind of one firm that does this. So we're going to go to them, and they're not as much a consultancy as sort of this information and data ranking, but we're going to ask them to be a consultancy for us and really get into our factors and decide, help us understand, are those the 10? Are we missing some? And then what do they see with global internet hubs, and where is it going? And write a report to us and present to our steering committee. So all this is in detail in this request for proposal document. The second one is the case studies. We want to interview 2 people at least from every market of the top 10. Who's involved? What did they do? Do they have a strategic plan? Can we get a copy? Have they figured out ROI and number of jobs added in becoming a global internet hub? And what's driving their investment in it, and what's next for their city. So we really want to learn from these case studies and connect the dots. And again, the consultant would present the findings to us. Here's our process. We prioritize the study areas. Really in our last meeting, number 2, should be last meeting, not today, but meeting number 3 is this, what I've just shared with you, just sort of our direction and the RFP document and the general budget kind of allocation. We want to have an RFP selection committee. The core planning group of the folks that put money into this are on this, and the guys that really kind of scoped out how we should go about this with the steering committee. And so what we want to do is have a meeting in the near future when we get these proposals in, and then as a committee, select how we move forward. Anybody on this call, any of the steering committee members that want to be in this next meeting to look at the proposals, we welcome you. I don't know what we'll do if all 62 people say yes, but that's fine. We're just going to say, here are the proposals, and then have a discussion. I don't think it'll be a long meeting, but we really want to do this as a group. And then the full steering committee is going to hear the findings and insights. And then once we get into that, one of the discussion points is, where do we go from here in pulling the plan together? What else is missing, and how do we spend the remaining resources, and or if some of the folks want to put additional funding into this to get number 3 done. So that's it, just sort of in a nutshell. Any questions or comments about that? Just wanted to make sure everybody knows how we're managing this and what's next. I'll open it up to see what you guys think. Scott? Scott, it looks like your hand's up. Do you have a comment?
I apologize. Actually, I forgot to turn it off after Renee gave that really good answer on the Confluent cable. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
All right, well, I don't see any hands up. Let me just reinforce that, we're going to try to get a really good line on telegeography because of the nature of what they do and what the information we're looking at. But then secondly, get some proposals in and really make a good decision about the consultant that can help us using the scope of work, and bring all this back to you guys, and try to get it done as fast as possible, because we really are trying to get this strategic plan done as soon as possible. So really exciting, and I look forward to learning more through this process. So this last section before we get to next steps was just any questions that are lingering, any suggestions you have about what we're doing. We packed a whole lot into today. By design, we didn't have a whole lot of time for discussion. We tried to spend a little time on each one of the topics, but any kind of 30,000-foot comments? I hope this is what you guys signed on for. A couple of thumbs up would be helpful. We're doing okay? All right. Okay. Vinay, do you have a comment? Okay, it's a thumbs up. Thank you. Great. All right. So our immediate next steps. And the good news is a lot going on that we can learn from. We have an annual event that's put on by the Chamber RVA and the Hampton Roads Chamber. And thank you to the two Brians who are on this call. This is how we really got on to this strategic plan, the one that happened last year in Williamsburg with the guys piped in from Marseille. So this next one is October the 13th, a Thursday it's a full day. It's in the Williamsburg Lodge. It's all about what's happening in our mega region. And we're going to hear from a lot of experts on the major initiatives that are happening in Hampton Roads, and then the same from Richmond, and then bringing it all together, how we really are leveraging the best of both regions and really working to scale to help both regions. And Aubrey Lane is going to be our keynote speaker at the end of the day. It's going to be preceded by a reception. So anybody's welcome. We got 72 people as of yesterday. We'll probably have over 100 easily. And just go to the Chamber website and sign up. But anybody's welcome. It's like $95 and comes with food and camaraderie and insights about how we're really working together to make our economies even stronger. And then the virtual innovation spotlights on October 4th and November 1st. You can see those are hour-long. Thank you to the experts, some on the call here that are going to be part of those. Those are recorded and posted, so we can put those two spotlights into our Global Internet Hub website and as reference materials. But those are going to be two really helpful events, and you can go to RVA 757 Connects to register for those particular things. And then I just want to join Anthony in plugging this IEIC, the Internet Ecosystem Innovation Committee. I mean, I'm looking at this as part of our research. I mean, we're having the whole world come to Henrico County, and we heard about one of the rock stars that's created the internet. But when you look at these other folks and the brands they represent, I mean, we're going to learn a ton just being at this meeting. So it's open, and I'll just reinforce what Anthony said: register and come to this. It is really a blessing. It's happening at this time right here in our mega region. So good job. And then our next meeting is Tuesday, October 25th. And that location, I think we stay virtual. I think we move towards thinking about getting together in December, but let's stay virtual and get everybody to come, and we'll keep working between our calls and line up these consultants. And so again, we'll put a date out there when the core group's going to get together to look at proposals, which is going to be very shortly. And if you want to make it and Zoom in, that's great. So I'll just stop there and see if there are any last comments. Really appreciate everybody staying with us today and staying with the committee. This is the work of 62 people, and that's the way the report's going to be written. And thank you for the great discussion on our tenets. We're gonna start holding those up as the inspiration for our work here, and we're gonna make this transformative. So thank you.
John, not sure if you saw, but there was a question, I think it was from Kelly from Meta.
Okay.
And I picked up on it because I've been, as you know, I've been in touch with Brian Anderson regarding the October 13th convergence event, if there's a timed agenda for that published yet.
There is, and we can send that out to this group. Yes.
Thank you.
And again, the Global Internet Hub is just one of several initiatives that RVA 757 connects with the CEOs from both markets are really pushing to really advance the innovation corridor. So we will talk about the Global Internet Hub. It's going to be more of a reporting on where we are and the great work that everybody's doing. But we'll talk about I-64 and the gap and the funding that's been made available for that, as well as the bike trail that runs from Richmond to Williamsburg and potentially getting will be extended all the way to Fort Monroe. So we're going to talk a lot about even government relations. So it's going to be an event that the chambers host, and really executives from both regions come together to understand, how do we drive our economies by working closer together. And so we'll push that agenda out to everybody on this call.
John, The other thing I want to point out is the Innovation Spotlight. If anyone is interested in attending that webinar Tuesday, please email me at greg.gilligan@RVA757 and I will send you the Zoom link to participate.
Yep. And I see everybody has stayed on, which I really appreciate. Any suggestions that you have? And I really appreciate Scott Brown came up with a couple of great ideas that on how to get more eyeballs on our whole network. And we'll hear more about that at a future meeting. But I just appreciate everybody emailing suggestions and thoughts, and not only on what should go on the plan, but how we should run these meetings. And let's just make the most out of this. We want to make this a committee that everybody is excited to be part of and have their name on this plan. So thank you very much. All right. Well, with that, it's 12 o'clock. We'll see you a month from now and look at some of the follow-up emails. And anybody wants to be on that selection panel, please join us. And please keep thinking about us and send us any studies or reports that should go in our database. We appreciate everybody's time and participation. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.